Have you ever looked at your workload and wondered why there never seems to be enough time in the day? Have you ever felt that if something is going to be done properly, you have to do it yourself? Welcome to Coaching Talks, folks. At its core, leadership reflects the integration of how we think, act, and live, whether that's across business, work, and life. And in the workplace, performance leadership is about aligning people, purpose, and processes to consistently achieve meaningful results, and it emanates from within and manifests itself outward. To expand the conversation on Mondays, our discussions turn to the Listening Heart series, which focuses on spiritual leadership in our daily lives. And on Fridays, we turn to adaptive leadership in the digital world. Now, what gives me the right to talk about all these things? Well, it really follows my life experiences. From 6 years in a seminary under the guidance of Benedictine monks, to 18 years in government at the executive level, to owning my own consulting and training business for over 40 years, and finally to transitioning my work into the digital world over the past several years. Hello, folks. I'm Richard Fontanie, and I'll be your host today. And if you're new to this podcast, welcome. And if you're returning, a heartfelt welcome back. Now, before we begin, I invite you, if you've not already subscribed, to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thank you for doing so. Now, this week's focus is on delegation and empowerment. And that really means sharing responsibility in a way that develops people, strengthens teams, and creates sustainable performance. And although this podcast focuses on the traditional workplace, remember we're all called to lead in some way, and whether or not we have a formal leadership position, or maybe we don't. Today we'll explore learning to share responsibility effectively. One of the greatest myths in leadership is that successful leaders do more than everyone else. In reality, successful leaders accomplish more because they learn how to work through others. They understand that leadership is not measured by how much work they personally complete, but by how effectively they develop people and create results through collaboration. Yet, delegation remains one of the most misunderstood leadership skills. Many leaders delegate poorly. Some refuse to delegate at all. Others delegate tasks but not authority. And still others hand off responsibility without providing guidance or support. The result is predictable. Leaders become overwhelmed, employees become frustrated, performance suffers, opportunities are missed, morale declines, and organizations stagnate. Effective delegation changes that equation. And delegation is not about getting rid of work. It's about expanding capability. Empowerment is not about losing control. It's about creating ownership. And when delegation and empowerment work together, leaders gain capacity, employees gain confidence, and organizations gain resilience. So why is this topic essential to performance leadership? Well, because performance is ultimately achieved through people. No leader, manager, supervisor, entrepreneur, or team leader can sustain high performance alone. The most successful organizations consistently developed individuals who think independently, solve problems, and contribute meaningfully. Delegation creates the environment where that development occurs. Without delegation, people remain dependent. With delegation, people become contributors. Without delegation, leaders become bottlenecks. But with delegation, leaders become multipliers. Now, let's explore 5 practical leadership strategies for sharing responsibility effectively while empowering others to succeed. Strategy 1 is about delegating outcomes and not just tasks. One of the most common delegation mistakes is that leaders focus on activities rather than on results. For example, a manager may assign someone to prepare a report without explaining why it matters, how it will be used, or what success looks like. When people perform better when they understand the purpose. So instead of simply assigning work, explain the desired outcome. Clarify expectations, describe success, connect the assignment to larger organizational goals. When people understand the why, they become more engaged in determining the how. That shift encourages initiative, creativity, and ownership. Strategy 2, match responsibility with capability. Now, effective delegation requires thoughtful consideration. Not every assignment is suited to every person. Strong leaders consider what I call KSAVA, K-S-A-E-V-A, and that stands for knowledge, skills, abilities, experience, values, and attitudes. And they look at KSAVA when assigning something to another employee. Now, this does not mean that the work is going to be easy. Growth really depends on people stepping outside of their comforts. However, stepping outside is different from being overwhelmed. A good leader provides assignments that challenges people while remaining achievable with appropriate support. The goal is development and not frustration. When responsibility aligns with capability and with potential, confidence grows. Strategy 3, provide clarity and resources. Imagine being assigned a major project without adequate information, authority, training, or resources. Unfortunately, that happens too often. Leaders sometimes assume people know more than they do. Effective delegation requires clarity, clarify objectives, deadlines, decision-making authority, available resources, and reporting expectations. The clearer people are at the beginning, the fewer misunderstandings occur later. Providing resources demonstrates a commitment to success. It tells people, I believe in your ability, and I am willing to support your efforts. Strategy 4, resist the temptation to micromanage. Now, this may be one of the most difficult lessons for experienced leaders to learn. After delegating, some leaders immediately start hovering. They review every decision, revise every document, and question every action. Eventually, employees conclude that ownership is an illusion. Now, if leaders insist on controlling everything, people start taking initiative. Micromanagement undermines empowerment. So effective leaders set checkpoints rather than resorting to constant supervision. They monitor progress without controlling every detail. They remain available for guidance without taking over, and they trust people to learn, adapt, and to grow. Now, trust is not blind optimism. Trust is confidence supported by preparation, communication, and accountability. Strategy number 5, recognize and celebrate growth. Delegation should not end when the task is complete. The final step is reflection and recognition. What worked well? What lessons were learned? What improvements could be made? And what strengths emerged? Recognition reinforces positive performance. People who feel valued are more likely to accept future responsibilities. Celebrating progress also reminds leaders that delegation is not solely about productivity. It's about people. It's about development. It's about building leadership capacity across the organization. Let me share a workplace story. Several years ago, I worked with an executive who struggled to delegate. He was exceptionally bright and deeply committed to excellence. However, he believed he could complete important projects faster and better than anyone else. In fact, he began correcting his own corrections. And as a result, his days became longer, his stress increased, his team became increasingly dependent, and I might say frustrated, and every significant decision flowed through his office. When his superior found out, though, unfortunately, he fired him. Now, from my vantage point, a better approach would have been to coach him to assign meaningful responsibilities to his team members, help him clarify expectations, and recommend that he provide coaching and establish regular check-ins, and then resist the temptation to take work back when mistakes occurred. Now, if his superior had done that, I suggest his transformation would have been quite remarkable. I suggest that his team would have grown more confident, their problem solving would have improved, he would have encouraged more innovation and engagement, and more importantly, his leadership capacity would have expanded across the organization. The lesson from this case is clear. The leader's role was not to do everything, but to develop others. The same principle applies beyond the workplace. Parents delegate responsibilities to children, community leaders empower volunteers, mentors share opportunities with emerging leaders, and coaches develop players who later become leaders. Delegation and empowerment are universal leadership principles that apply whenever people work together toward meaningful goals. Now, as we approach our conclusion, let me offer a simple action plan. First, identify one responsibility you currently perform that could be delegated. Second, identify a person who could benefit from this opportunity. Third, clarify the desired outcome. Fourth, provide the resources and the support required. And fifth, establish a follow-up schedule, and then take action. Do not wait for a perfect set of conditions. Leadership growth occurs through practice. Remember that delegation is a skill, and like every skill, it improves with practice and with experience. Some attempts will succeed immediately. Others will require adjustment, and that is normal. The important thing is to continue to developing the habit. The future of your team, organization, and leadership effectiveness may depend upon it. Bring this podcast into your next conversation, meeting, or coaching moment. And remember, leadership is practiced one interaction at a time. And sustainable excellence is built in rhythms and not marathons. And if this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and refer to a friend. And thank you for doing so. Oh, and there's one other thing, the learning lens from my perspective. The key insight that we can draw from this conversation is delegation and empowerment are not about reducing workload. They are about developing people while increasing organizational capacity. What seemed to work well? Well, we connected practical workplace leadership strategies with real-world examples and actionable steps. We also highlighted how empowerment strengthens both performance and engagement. And here's a further point to consider. Are you holding on to responsibilities that could become growth opportunities for someone else? And here's a question that you could ask yourself. What is the one responsibility you can intentionally delegate this week to help another person develop confidence and capability? And what is your takeaway? Mine is, great leaders do not create followers. They create opportunities for others to grow into leaders. Now, thank you for listening, folks. Next week, we'll explore another topic in the Coaching Talk series, how to execute projects. I hope you'll join us. I'm Richard Fontanie, saying bye for now.